Hello and welcome to the Marble Security Podcast. It's our first podcast of January 2014. Welcome and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year!
Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a wonderful new year. You know, I got a little bit of time off after Christmas, and it's great to be back at work.
Well, it certainly is, and today we're going to have a special episode focused on the security of your text messaging on your various mobile devices. We were greeted with kind of an interesting bit of news on New Year's Day, were we not?
Yeah, we were. It was kind of a surprise. So there was a lot of news about Snapchat being such a valuable company. And someone decided to leak 4.6 million Snapchat phone numbers and usernames onto the internet.
Now, my understanding is that this was an API vulnerability that had been disclosed to the Snapchat team in November or early December, and they really hadn't responded, and therefore the developer basically exposed that?
Yeah, he did. You know, one thing I have to call out kudos is the gentleman that exposed this. You know, he went through the proper channels. He let people know that there was a vulnerability. He gave them a reasonable amount of time, but yet Snapchat, they didn't quite get to it in time. I think they did come out with a fix for it lately.
It turns out that Gibson Security found this vulnerability in the API, which is basically the look up your friends by their phone number API. Talk to the Snapchat folks. They basically, were not responsive, and I think turned them over to their customer support department. And effectively, after no response, he published, I believe on December 24th, how to basically mine this database of all these users. And it was barely a week afterwards that someone went and used that information and mined, as you say, 4.6 million people's information and published it on the net.
Yeah, they published it at snapchatdb.info, and it was an anonymous group, so I don't know if they have any sort of affiliation with anyone who reported the data, but oh my goodness.
My understanding of this is that they obfuscated the last few digits of the phone numbers. However, they freely said, connect to us and contact us, and we'll give you all the data if you want it.
Man, that's a fisher's dream.
A fisher's dream. January's been a busy month for messaging vulnerabilities. There was some other big disclosure, wasn't there, Ryan?
Yeah, there was. It was a little thing called Dishfire.
What's Dishfire?
Well, Dishfire is the NSA project where they were pulling down 200 million text messages a day.
So they're basically monitoring people's communication, whether it's private communication between private citizens or business text messages, potentially text messages of government employees, and they're reading the entire conversations and creating threads. This isn't just metadata. This is true conversations.
This is real data.
This is real data.
This is real data. This is real information going in between people. This isn't header information. This is the actual data that people are sending to each other.
Now, these are SMS text messages, and let's just, for our listeners, be clear that SMS texts are effectively sent over the cell phone network, and they are sent basically in the clear.
Yeah, typically they are. There's no encryption on them. There's no certificate that checks to make sure the person who got it is actually the person that it was supposed to be sent to.
Presumably there's no good way to authenticate who they came from.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not much security around SMS at all.
And that's probably because it's a multi-carrier protocol that has to exchange between different carriers all around the world. And they never thought about security when this was designed in the 80s.
That's right, and it has to work with every single phone that's on the networks too. So it was a pretty complex problem. It's good for what it is, which is sending information to the NSA.
Well, now, I've had some folks talk to me about Apple's iMessage, which is it looks like an SMS texting program, but it's a little more sophisticated. it doesn't just send messages over SMS. If I'm connected, for example, to a Wi-Fi network on my iPhone or iPad, and you're connected to a Wi-Fi network on your iPhone, then that will actually not go over SMS and incur fees, which is great. It goes over the internet through Apple's network. That will actually be encrypted, won't it?
Yeah, it will. It will be encrypted. However, who holds the keys, Dave?
Apple holds the encryption key, so they're effectively a man in the middle who can either on purpose or through government mandate, or potentially if they get hacked, expose the contents of those messages.
That's right. And they also don't do certificate pinning. So if someone has a malicious CA, they can pretend to be Apple.
Right. The other thing that's about this iMessage is that you can't ever be sure that the person you're sending the message to is on a Wi-Fi network when they receive it. Therefore, the sender has no real certainty that the receiver is going to get that message encrypted. That sounds like a problem if you're a doctor sending basically patient information or photographs of a patient, perhaps an x-ray, to another doctor, a specialist somewhere else in the country. You just really don't know that message is encrypted end to end, which, if it's not, would violate HIPAA privacy regulations.
Yeah, if I was running a hospital, I would be having nightmares about this. On one hand, you have patients who need urgent care. And the doctors, they need to get their information as soon as possible to make sure they can give the highest quality of care. However, every HIPAA violation has a hefty price tag associated with it, especially nowadays when we're talking about other people who can possibly see that information. Those are HIPAA violations of a magnitude we haven't seen before.
And doctors like to use text messaging rather than email because it pops up right away. You don't have as much spam. You can more reliably tell who you're getting it from. It doesn't go through filters. So it seems like this is a problem that's here to stay and is only growing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You mentioned all those nice features, why doctors would use it. That's why. It's easy to use. It gets information where it needs to go quickly. You're right. But it's insecure.
Yeah. So it sounds like what's needed is a more secure version of messaging that can also work cross-platform, not just iPhone to iPhone if you're on Wi-Fi, but iPhone to iPhone if you're on just the cell network, also to Android phones, and even to PCs.
That's right.
Well,
that would help the healthcare industry tremendously.
All right. Well, if you're at all interested in learning more about it, take a look at marblesecurity.com. We just happen to have some secure messaging capabilities that you might be interested in.
That's right. I use it every day.
All right. Well, that's it for our podcast this week. We will be back next week with more information on what's happening in mobile security, and we will most likely do an update on one of our favorite problem children, Bitcoin. Until then, stay secure on the net.